If the patch note hype brought her from that 1.6 to 2.35 or something, then that would be a successful buff in of itself. That's a huge jump for any legend, especially one at the bottom tier.
Oh no, there's another squad attacking.
We're going to dive right into the legend balancing. And we got one legend this time around. We got Wattson. Okay. So
yeah, that's it.
That is it. That is it. And with that, we got a very long explanation of Wattson. So step aside. You got a new Level Z reader coming in here to read these dev notes for you. Okay. Move aside, Ash. This is Wattson season. We're ecstatic, great pun, to finally share some long anticipated Wattson improvements. Her win rate and encounter win rate have always been above average. This could be for a multitude of reasons. Her defensive playstyle correlates to high average placements. Wattson mains are diehard loyalists, and her hitbox has been the smallest in the game ever since Lifeline's adjustment. Regardless, much of the high level data that we've shared doesn't match perception. Play a few games as Wattson, and you'll often find yourself wanting more out of her kit. The goal of these changes is to redistribute her individual power into parts of her kit that shape the battlefield in a unique way. We wanted to see what changes could spark more consistency and efficacy in her kit, and ideally ground some of the difficulties surrounding the way her abilities work. We want to enable more active gameplay from Wattson players by smoothing out the rough edges and placing fences. Responsiveness tweaks, longer range, and faster cooldowns mean that Wattson can much more quickly and reliably set up a defensive position or even use her fences and pylon in the midst of an open combat in a pinch. Now, okay, we got the dev note there. Before we kind of discuss what they actually changed, I think you have some opinions on why we're maybe getting some a long explanation, essentially.
Yeah, I think a lot of what the devs say here makes a lot of sense, and we certainly agree with it. Like,
Always sounds good on paper. Mm-hmm.
it really does sound good. All these things are true, and the changes that they're posing do make sense in order to make her feel a little bit better. But I think it's important to note that it's human nature to be long winded, or maybe write a little more than you should if you aren't super confident or you're desperately trying to explain yourself. So, whatever they really changed about Wattson based off of just this one page essay we got, it must be spicy or at
Mm-hmm.
least a bit interesting. And I think it is.
It definitely is. So, like in general, they improve the placement location of fences. Now you can kind of see it at an above eye level. That's a brand new feature of the game. They increased the hitbox to compensate for low profile being removed. So now Wattson's kind of in line with Lifeline. Interesting change. Obviously, like they mentioned, one of the big pros to Wattson was the small hitbox, and now she's a bit more in line with Lifeline. We're going to rattle off these changes, okay? Tactical, increased damage on crossing a fence by 33%, 15 damage to 20. Increased debuff duration on crossing a fence by 100%, 1.5 to 3 seconds. Increase the time allowance to be hit again by a subsequent fence effect by 100%, half a second to a second. Decrease the recharge time by 50%, 30 seconds to 15 seconds. They increase the placement range by 50%. They decrease the delay from between fences shutting off and reactivating after an ally passes through them by 60%. So 1 second to 0.4 seconds. And Wattson now moves at unarmed speed while readying, placing fence nodes. Fence nodes can now be placed as soon as the weapon is readied instead of waiting for the animation to finish. What are some of your reactions to the tactical? What do you think this means potentially for Wattson and just that?
Yeah, I mean, overall, fences are better. They're faster, they're
Easier.
stronger, they're
Mhm.
going to stun you more. Um, this is good. I mean, if you decide to push through a Wattson fence, you're going to be severely punished more than you were before.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest complaints was that you can't be reactive with Wattson. And one of the things that we've heard balancers talk about a lot within Apex is making Legends more reactive and kind of towing that line when need be. And it looks like this is a potential forceful effort to try and make her tactical more reactive to situations. Let's talk ultimate though. They reduced the number of active pylons Wattson can place from 3 to 1. The pylons now last forever instead of timing out after 90 seconds. the pylon now has a pool of 250 shields that can be distributed to nearby players instead of effectively infinite shields that it was before. They increased the pylon shield recharge rate by 150% and smoothed the regen rate from 2 seconds to 5 seconds, which is more accurately 1 to 1.5 seconds to 1 and 0.02 seconds. What's the comparison for that from a shield cell perspective?
Yeah, essentially what that means is that one cell of shields can
Mm-hmm.
get charged in 5 seconds now from 12 and a half seconds before. So now it's a lot more time efficient to
Mm-hmm.
rely on the ultimate to recharge your shields. Really solid. Like as a passive recharge rate, that's 5 times faster than Octane's regen to the health, and this
Mm-hmm.
can affect the whole team. So this is a big, big speed improvement.
It used to be when you put the pylon on the ground, you hit a cell anyways. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be the case anymore. You can just put the pylon on the ground and feel safe. When a pylon is out of shields, though, it no longer recharges player shields but can still zap incoming ordnance. Taking damage while regenerating shields via the pylon delays continued regeneration by a second. That's an interesting thing to monitor right there. The UI on the ground and HUD elements now display the amount of shields that remain in the pylon. Pinging a friendly pylon will now display the percentage of shields remaining in the pylon. Pylon ordnance zapping has been moderately reworked, so the ordnance is now zapped when the pylon detects that it would hit any surface within range and line of sight of the pylon instead of being zapped as soon as it comes within range. As part of the changes, current issues where the pylon doesn't reliably zap ordnance, particularly among concerning airstrike abilities and ordnance that bounced off surfaces near the pylon, should now be addressed, which is great on that last point because right before the season ended, I remember that I don't remember if I was playing with you, but I was playing with a Wattson and got absolutely melted by a Gibraltar bombardment, even though I felt like I was right there with the pylon. So it's nice that they've fixed what feels like a lot of these frustrations that players that did play Wattson maybe had for, absolutely grinding her and seeing like all the bugs and such that went on.
Totally. I have to agree that all of this sounds good, and both the change to the tactical and the ultimate do make a lot of sense. That it's now going to work as intended.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, though, this is the longest change we've ever had to a legend
Yeah.
ever,
Mm-hmm.
and many people are thinking this might be a complete rework. Um, but what do we think overall? I think that this is very complicated, whether it's a
Yes.
buff or a rework. Did it need to be this complicated in order to give Wattson more power? Absolutely not. But there is a reason it's difficult to buff a legend like Wattson. The devs told us that they experimented with Wattson being able to use her ultimate on her back, so while on the move,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't pursue that option. But overall, these changes are very good. In terms of quality of life, Wattson is better at what she already did, which was desperately needed. That being said, these changes, in our opinion, will
Mm-hmm.
not increase Wattson's pick rate and will only satisfy the die-hard Wattson community for a few weeks. Now, some interesting things about that community is that the pick rate of Wattson the day of the patch notes being announced was 1.6%. Final day of season 10, it was 2.34. So before people even had a chance to play her changes, people were already excited about Wattson.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest thing that many people may not know is that the Wattson main subreddit is the largest of any legend with over 20,000 members.
That's
So
kind
this
of
is a
crazy.
loyal,
Mm-hmm.
loyal community.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think these changes or buffs are really going to blow it up substantially.
And honestly, if the patch note hype brought her from that 1.6 to 2.35 or something, then that would be a successful buff in of itself. That's a huge jump for any legend, especially one at the bottom tier. And that's fine if she's towards the bottom. We've talked about it endlessly. Like her play style is not indicative of a movement legend that's super fun and the reason you play Apex. But now you're going to see more success in doing so. I'm interested to see what the pros kind of have to think about Wattson and see if she finds her way into comp at all anytime soon again. That's where she was born, essentially, was like as the comp love of everything. And so I do wonder if she'll be able to get back into that state of play. And that would, I think, be the most interesting thing to me. If we kind of had like, hey, Gibby and Wattson aren't really pubs or ranked picks, but they do have a really strong spot in the ALGS just because Wattson right now doesn't have that space in ranked, doesn't have that space in pubs, and doesn't have a space in the ALGS right now. So hopefully this can bring her maybe back into one of those three. Um, that would be my optimistic point of view, but I definitely could see this being we see a little uptick right now and back down in a week or so.
I mean, for the exact reasons that you just mentioned, Watson was and potentially still is in a really tough spot because
Hmm.
why do you play her? Where do you play her? How do you play Watson? I think it's a big question, even though there's so many people that love the character.
Hmm. I
But the
love the
fact
character.
that, yeah,
I'm a huge fan. I've been a Watson fan forever. It's best skydive
hard
emote
not
in
to
my
be.
mind. She has the best res animation. It's unique. Like she's fantastic in every way, shape, or form.
Totally. Very hard to kind of overlook liking Watson. But I think it's really crucial to admit that the fact that Watson isn't going to be at the end of this season in the top 5 or top 10 in pick rate,
Hmm.
that's very good for the game. Not only is it okay, but it's actually in the very best interest of all the players. Because in a hero shooter like Apex, there are naturally going to be powerful and popular abilities. Stim, phase, scanning, grappling, passive, reviving, all are great abilities that are fun and rewarding to use. Attempting to give legends that have defensive playstyles or unique playstyles, like using decoys, or if you try to give a decoy legend a similar amount of power as an Octane or a Wraith, that would fundamentally destroy the game. And we don't usually talk that extreme on the show, but I think that it's quite a slippery slope if you have that mindset of we're trying to look for equity or equality among legends, kit, and their power.
I mean, look at what happened in the past. Like most frustrating metas in people's opinions were caustic and revenant metas per se. And so
Yeah,
when those odd legends are dominating the top, people are very frustrated. Watson is a more fun character than those two, but she still feels like an odd legend from the playstyle perspective.
yeah, she certainly is. If designers continued to buff legends like Rampart, Watson, and Crypto until they were in the middle to the top of the pack, in terms of pick rate, the game would be filled with cheap kills and abilities just completely saturating the gunplay. The
Hmm.
current balancing state has mobility concentrated at the top. If turrets, gas, death protection, and decoys were the most efficient tactical available, Apex would not be very fun, and it might suck overall. So, I don't know. Apex is predicated on and known for its movement. And it's just the reason that it makes sense that the most popular legends would play into that strategy.
No doubt about it. And we're being totally like slightly negative about Watson. We've just seen the legends get buffs and then pick up and then fly right back down. If Watson's top 5 by end of season, like I'm happy to eat crow and we can have a whole nother discussion about that come towards the end of the season. I think it's very unlikely that that happens. But for the Watson players that are out there, I really hope you enjoyed the buffs. And I hope there is a handful of people that see this legend now and give her a chance because she's getting some time to at least shine in the patch notes per se, and she's getting a really strong segment of this episode today just because of how many changes were made to her. So I think it's really exciting for all the Wattson fans because she's just a fantastic character all around and has been on the back burner for a very, very long time.
Boom! Whole squad down.